If you're like me, you like your animations to look nice, and I really have been searching everywhere on God's green earth to find a free option where I can take a output simulation like this and render it out so that it looks really good and realistic. In this case, this is an LS-Dyna animation output D3 plot file format of a bottle cap popping off with a bottle opener. This is a previous video I did where I just kind of modeled popping off a beer bottle with 3 different bottle openers. And I wanted to find a way that I could render this so that the bottle was glass. It wasn't just like some transparent looking, okay looking thing. I wanted to make it look really nice, like a piece of CAD that has been rendered out and looks really, really good. But I really couldn't find anything. I know Blender, I've seen some things from LSTC where it looks like it, but I really don't know how they did it. But I figured it out. So you can take this process and use it for whatever simulation you have, as long as the output files are not proprietary and you can open it in a different software. I think this is an issue with ANSYS, but I know there's some workarounds. But what you're going to do is there's 5 steps. So you first need your D3 plots or your outputs for whatever software you're using. You're then going to need Paraview, which is a free-to-use program, and you're going to open your output files in Paraview. You're then going to export whatever you import into Paraview. You're going to export it as an OBJ sequence. This is just an object sequence. So you're going to convert your finite element analysis simulations into OBJs. You're then going to import that OBJ sequence into Blender. Blender is a free-to-use rendering / video tool. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff it does, and it is very user-friendly. So I need to make this to just help people get it in. And then you're going to render your animation in Blender, and through that you can apply different materials that makes it look really nice, and I'm going to show you how to do that, and it's awesome. So like I said, you're first going to need your output files, and here is my folder with my D3 plot files here. I really highly suggest outputting these in a high frequency, so outputting your frames for your animation in a high enough frequency where it's going to look nice, because there's really not much you can do if you have a really choppy amount of frames. Like if you have a 100 millisecond simulation and you only have 10 frames, well, it's going to look like crap because there's just not many frames. It's just like film. You have to have a certain FPS, right? So in LS-Dyna, that is this binary D3 plot, and this is outputting 1 frame every 0.1 milliseconds for a 50 millisecond simulation. So that's pretty fine, and it makes it look really nice. So I just wanted to make that note. Then what you're going to do is you're going to copy your location. You're going to open up Paraview. You first have to download it. I'll put a link in the description where to download it. You're going to click this folder, and you're going to paste your location here and hit enter. And then you're just going to find your first file. This is how I do it for LS-Dyna. You're going to find your first D3 plot file, and you're just going to double click it. I know some software like ANSYS or whatever else doesn't have a bunch of files in a row, but just try and click whatever file it outputs and try that. So, and then once you have it open, you're going to make sure it's blue, and then you're going to hit apply, and it's going to open it. So I'm not going to get into all the ins and outs of Paraview. I made a video prior about that, and that was when I was really trying to just render stuff out through here, but I figured out how to get it into Blender, which is it's not a little, it's a lot better. So what you're going to do next is you're going to click on this, you're going to right click, you're going to go to add filter, alphabetical, and then you're going to go to extract surface. What this is going to do is take your finite element simulation and extract surfaces for all the objects in the simulation to be sort of like CAD. So it's just like a surface at this point if you do this, and you're going to hit apply, and then that's done. So it's no longer a finite element analysis simulation. It is just surface objects. I may be wrong. If somebody knows more about that in Paraview and can explain it, feel free to comment. I would love to learn. But I'm not a Paraview expert by any chance. I'm just using this as a tool. So then you're going to right click extract surface, go to add filter, alphabetical, and then you're going to go to triangulate. What triangulate is going to do, it's going to take any non-triangles, so like square elements or hexahedral elements, and convert them into triangles. This is because surface files like STL files all are made up of just a bunch of triangular elements, air quotes, elements. And this is going to convert them to that so that you can use it as a surface object. You're then going to hit apply. and then you're going to right click on triangulate, add filter alphabetical, and then the last thing you're going to do is generate surface normals. What this is going to do is take the new surfaces that you created from extract surfaces and triangulate them, and it's going to create normals, and it's also going to smooth everything out. So that's all the steps you're going to do here in Paraview. You're then going to click here. You're going to make sure that generate surface normals is highlighted. You're going to go to file, and you're going to go to save data. And then what you want to do is open up an empty folder, or create an empty folder. And you want to make sure it's empty, because whenever you write these OBJ sequences, it's going to write one file for every object at every time step. So in this case, it's going to write over 1,000 files. So just make sure it's an empty file or an empty folder. And we're going to make this, we're just going to name this opener. And you want to name it just a generic name. And then what Paraview is going to do is it's going to name this for each of your objects. It's going to have an output opener, and then it's going to put a number after it. So it's going to be opener 0 would be, the top of this opener. And it's going to have opener 1 will be the blue part, and then opener 2 will be the red, and so on and so forth. And then after that, you're going to have opener 0, and then it's going to have an underscore, and then a few numbers, so like 000, and then 0001. And that is just saying each of those is at the time step. So just find a name, click it, and then hit OK. And then you really want to make sure you do this step. So click write time steps. This is going to write one OBJ file for every time step that you have in your output. And this is what I was saying. You want to make sure that you have plenty of time steps over your simulation so that it looks smooth. Then you want to make sure that you go here and you change this format to 0.3D. So what this is going to do is save the file format. Like I said, you're going to have your file name, and then there's going to be like a 0, 1, whatever, how many objects that you have, followed by an underscore 000 and then 001, because this is the way you have to do it to import it into Blender the way I'm going to show you. And then you're going to hit OK, and it's going to start writing, and you want to make sure not to touch anything because Paraview will crash. So once that's done, you can just go ahead and close Paraview because we're done with it. You're then going to go to blender.org, and you're going to download Blender. It's free to use, and it's just a renderer / open catter. It's exactly what it is, open catter. And then while that's downloading, you need to go and download an add-on for Blender, which is going to enable you to be able to import OBJ sequences because it can't do it natively. So I'm going to link this, and this is a add-on. It's called Stop Motion OBJ. It's very important, and it links to here, and you just download it, and you can follow the video for instructions, and it'll go through everything. And if you have any questions, just let me know, and I can help you go through it. But you're going to download that and install it in Blender, and then you're going to be good to go, and we're going to move on to Blender. And when you open Blender, it's going to look like this. What you want to do, you can just click General. That's fine. I want to disclaim I am not a Blender expert at all. I kind of figured out the best thing that I could do for the video that I was making before with the bottle cap and openers. So I kind of got by, and so just take my advice with a grain of salt. I'm just going to show you how I import everything and then give you a basic overview of what I did for the video. I promised everybody I'd show you what I did for that video to make everything look like it did. But whenever you open it up, you can just, you can rotate by holding the scroll wheel, scroll in and out to rotate, or that's not right, to scroll in and out. Hold shift, middle scroll wheel to pan, and so on. So this is your camera, this is a light, and this is a block. So you can just go ahead and delete this. And once you get your add-on installed, how you're going to add these files in is you're just going to hold shift and then click A, and it's going to bring this little quick menu up. You're going to go to mesh and then mesh sequence. So it's going to create this thing called a sequence. So each object in the simulation is going to be opened as a sequence. So whenever I saved it as opener 1, all the opener 1s through all the time steps are going to be sequenced, like this sequence. And then I open up the next one, it's going to be sequence 1, and so on. And these are able to be manipulated in Blender, given material properties, and they're going to be playable. Down here is where you're going to load the sequences to create this, or to populate this, I guess I would say. So what you want to do is go down here to root folder. You're going to find your folder with all your OBJ sequences. This is why I said you want to have an empty folder, because you're just going to have all of these files. And like I'm saying, you have opener and then 0. And then this is frame 1 or frame 0, whatever you want to say, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then if we scroll way down here, you have opener 1, and then it's doing the same thing. So what we're going to do is copy the path to this folder, and you're going to paste it here in the root folder and hit enter. And then you're going to go file name. And what you're going to put in file name is this first portion of it right here. So you're going to copy in opener and then whichever one, so 0. And you can copy it, you can just type it, whatever you want. And you're going to go here, paste it, and enter. You're then going to hit load mesh sequence, and you're going to get blasted with this epileptic series of numbers. Just again, don't touch anything, Blender may crash. And this could take a while depending on your computer, depending on how big the files are, how many there are, etc. But it's going to populate this, and you're going to be able to animate through the simulation. So once it finished importing it, you may be wondering where it is. Well, you may be in the same boat as me, where your simulation was in millimeters. Blender does not have units. It's just called Blender units. So I think one of these blocks is just 1. So it's like 1, 2, 3. I think so. But whenever you have it in millimeters, it's going to be a high number of units. So like 1,000 millimeters is, 1 meter. So it's going to be huge. So you're going to zoom out, and then here's the bottle opener. So these things are like the size of Godzilla. And what you're going to have to do is import everything in if this is happening. And you're then going to use this scale and scale it all down to kind of fit into what your scene would be. Because otherwise, the light source, the camera, these type of things have maximum values. So like there's only a certain amount of light that a light can emit. And if your things are gigantic, it's going to be impossible to light them. So you're going to have to scale everything down. It doesn't matter at this point, because they're literally just objects that are just doing things on the screen. So I just wanted to point that out. And so like I said, this is up here now, and you can actually click the play button, and it's going to do what it does in the simulation. It's just barely moving if you can't tell. And it may pop off, and it's moving. And you can change this so it's at N250. This is actually 500 frames. So you have to do this for each object in the simulation. This can be crazy for some people who have just a ton of objects and are very complex simulations. I don't have a workaround for you guys. If somebody figures it out, that'd be awesome. But right now you just have to do them one by one. You can save Blender files as projects, so you can do some and save it so that you don't have to redo everything. But we're going to add the next one. The place to add is this orange square. And if you see, so like what I mean by that is this is the tab where that sequence to input the path and then the object name, but it's not there anymore. So what you have to do is actually redo Shift A and then go to mesh sequence again. And now it's going to be here. So you're going to have to do that every time for each object. And like I said, if you end up like down here and you're trying to get back to the place to import an OBJ sequence, it's this orange square once you're, adding the sequence. So what we want to do here is do your path again, paste, and then type in your object, so opener, and then this is going to be 1. So we did 0, and then this is going to be 1, and then you're going to hit load. So there's the second part, and again, you can click on these, and they're going to select them. You can just left click on the screen. You can hide these with the eyeball, all the good stuff. And I'll get into it some more. I want to caution, though, at the beginning, this is an empty scene, and whenever you're trying to render something to make it look nice, you have to have things like backgrounds, lights. There's just one light in this. Camera's looking down. And little things like a curved back surface, multiple lights, all these things really make a difference whenever you're trying to make something look nice. And obviously you want it to look nice if you're watching this video. So what I will suggest is not making a scene from scratch, but using something that someone else has already made as a template. And what that means is you can download scenes from online that are free and then just import your objects into that scene, scale them down so that they fit, and then render a video out from there. It's much smarter, much faster, so that you don't have to actually like become an expert in Blender. You can just use pre-populated scenes and then render your stuff out, make it look nice. So this website is called Free 3D. You can download free 3ds files, which are Blender files. You can just open them directly in Blender, OBJ files, all kinds of stuff, anything you want to use and like put next to your simulations to make them look cool, whatever you want. And I went here and just typed in bottle, scrolled down and found this. And this kind of had this nice little scene going, and I thought it would be good. So I downloaded it and opened it. And this is what I used for that video. I didn't use the bottle. I got rid of the bottle, brought my own stuff in, but used like the background and the lighting, because that's the thing that's actually pretty difficult to do on your own. So I downloaded that and then open it up and then bring our own stuff in. So I wanted to say this because I don't want you going too far deep importing your own stuff into Blender and then trying to like make a environment. After you download it, it's just going to be called Coca-Cola Blend. If you want to use this, it's fine. Just double click it and it'll open it up. And this is what it's going to look like. So, like I said, you got this like curved back surface that kind of captures the light really well. It's really nice. And then you have 4 lights as well as a camera here. Then all the stuff's up here. So these are area lights. And I'm going to go over just a few quick instructions on how to use this. So if you want to look through your camera, you hit 0. And then this is going to show what's going to be rendered out. I do want to mention these different templates have different customized like layouts. So if you remember before, this may have been a little different. These were up top. There are different tabs. There's just so much stuff in Blender and it can be so confusing. So just look up tutorials that is like really basic and just get you by, because you can get so deep down the rabbit hole. Doing what I did probably took a few days to like figure it out and get it right. So it can take a long time. But once you're here, these are your different view layers. So this is just like a normal shaded layer that has no materials. And then if you click here, it's like a kind of a preview of the render. It's not actually real. And then if you click here, this is going to be like your like render, what it would actually look like. And you see it like kind of clicking through and getting finer and finer. And this is a render format called, or render engine called Cycles. You will find that over here in the rendering tab, which is this like camera, and see it's render engine Cycles. And what that does is like it renders out certain areas of the image and then gradually makes it more and more fine to make it look super nice. This takes forever, like just an enormous amount of time. This is traditionally what you'd have to do when you wanted to render stuff, was this type of method, and it would just take a long time to even render out an image, and we're trying to render out 500 images, right? So Blender has one called Eevee, which is better, but it doesn't work with all materials. So if I change this to Eevee, see this material, it's glass, but now it's only showing up as black. So you have to be very careful, and you're going to have to use Eevee when it comes to your renders, but just look for stuff that's Eevee specific online. I just wanted to mention that, because in Cycles as well, if you rotate it, you're just going to like have a freaking seizure because all these things are just going crazy. So what I suggest doing for this, if you're going to just use this template, is just clicking on the bottle and just deleting all the stuff that was here. You just get rid of it. Keep everything else though. And then doing the same method that we did before and importing in your mesh sequences and bringing all your objects into here and then rendering it out. Once you get all of your objects imported, what we're going to do is scale everything down. So you want to make sure you're over in this orange square tab again. And you can't scale everything down at one time, unfortunately. So what you have to do is just do it one by one. So if you left click, and then you can go down over here to scale, and you can, mess around with what is the correct size. I suggest if you're going to try and figure out what's the right size, to just take something like the bottle or like the main feature, hide everything else, and then just look at like a scale factor. I know this is going to be 0.03, and that's an X, and you're going to have to do this for all of them. I think you may actually be able, you know, actually just doing it live. If you click this, nope. I don't know how to scale them all at once. I think you just have to do it one by one, like one direction at a time, which is, you know, fairly annoying, but just gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. So then scale it down so it's like within the correct, you know, relative size of your downloaded environment. And then do the same thing with the other ones. So you can just re-highlight everything else and do this for all of them. As you can tell, and like I said before, I am not an expert in Blender because there is 100% a way to do this all at once and easily. I just don't know how to do it. So, but this is how I did it. You're then going to want to move it up. So if you want to move stuff, you can click your sequences up here and then shift and click them. And then you're going to move up here and then just drag whatever axis you want to move it. So, you know, you can kind of look at whatever you're looking at and move it around. And you can also rotate and, you know, make your thing look very nice. And then once you're done with that, you can look through the camera and you want to center everything, make it look good. And you may be wondering where like the play is. What you're going to want to do is this is the default tab, and click this plus button and do general and then do shading, or actually do layout. This is like going to be your standard view. So now everything's up here again, and then you have your play button and you can like look through the animation and there it's going to play. Again, you want to make sure you keep an eye out for this. This is your start time step point and then your end point, and make your end point whatever the last number of frames is in your simulation, because it's automatically going to do 250 for some reason. I think that's just because this is the, you know, the template that I downloaded only went to 250. So you want to make sure you change this. And then you're gonna add one more tab. This is going to be a shading tab, and it's here, shading. This is going to be the place where you add your materials to your models. And I'm just going to go ahead and say now, if you don't really care about going further, this is the point where it stops being about getting your animations into Blender and it just becomes a Blender tutorial, a very bad one at that. So if you don't care about how I made this bottle and stuff look, just go ahead and just close the video now. So we're going to move back to the layout tab, and I'm just going to kind of work down these sub tabs just so you know a little bit about what you're going to be, you know, doing and looking for. So this top one, I don't know what it is. This next one is the kind of, it's your scene tab or render properties. What you want to go and do here is change your render engine to Eevee. And then this is your, these are like sampling rates. So the higher you make this, the better it's going to look in your render, and then your viewport's going to kind of downsample it so it's faster. You can just leave them like that if you want right now. Ambient occlusion, for what I did with this glass, I turned this on. I also went to subsurface scattering. Oh no, sorry. I went to screen spacer fractions, turned it on, opened up the tab, and then turned refraction on and removed half res trace. And then I turned trace projection all the way up and turned edge fading all the way down. And again, this may not be for you. You know, this is just what I had to do because glass was a little more difficult to do in Blender. Then went to shadows, turn the shadows up higher, and I'll link some videos that I learned how to do all this from. Hopefully they'll be helpful. And then like indirect lighting is going to be lighting that's not from your lamps, which I don't want. And then next tab is like the output tab. This is going to be, you know, it's your output. So the first thing is your resolution. If you hit 0 while you're looking at it, it's going to take you to your camera. At least it should. There it goes. And right now it's a square aspect ratio, so it's going to output a video or a picture in 1080 by 1080. So if you want to change this, make it 1920 by 1080. And now it's going to change the shape of your camera. And now it's outputting like this. But you see it's too close now. So if you want to change the location of your camera, you can kind of get your view where you want it, and then you hit Shift Alt 0, and it's going to reset your camera location to that location. So that's how you do that. And you can move the camera manually too. This is just what I'm doing. You want to make sure again here your frames are the length of your frames for your simulation. And then down here at stereoscopy, I don't know, that sounds like a medical procedure. You're going to want to put your output path to wherever you want your video, your images outputting to. So let me make a folder. So I'm just going to put it in this folder that I've been putting stuff. And then what you want to do is make sure, okay, you don't have to make sure, but this is your file format that's going to be output. So I'm going to link a video to explain all this, but what you can do is you can either output something in a video, so like an AVI, which is in JPEG format, or you can output something that is just JPEGs or image files, and it's just going to save it in a huge series of like images that you're then going to have to reconstruct into a video. And why you would do that is because you can restart exporting the images if Blender crashes, if that makes any sense. But this is where you're going to change. If you just want to do a video and it's not too crazy of a animation, just make this AVI JPEG, and then you're going to, you know, it may automatically make a file name here. If you're in here, you can just say like opener, and then that's going to be the file name in this folder. It's kind of weird. So moving on to the next tab, this is your layer properties. I don't know what it does. Let's see, what do I know? This is the world tab. So this is like, if you wanted to add like a circular image around this, that's going to allow like your objects to react to it. This is where you'd put like the world properties. This tab is what we kind of looked at before. This is like the object properties of whatever you're selecting. And what else? The next one is modifiers. This one's important. It's going to allow you to modify your objects. And what this means is if you have something like I've got where these are shells, see how this is like a shell? You can add a modifier to it to make it a thick shell, like to visualize. So what you can do is if you have a shell and you want it to represent whatever thickness you have in your simulation, you can click it, go to add modifier, solidify, and then you can apply a thickness. So let me just see what 1 does. And then you have an offset here, which means like if you want it to extrude one way or the other, or if you want it to just be in the middle. And you see I've got some weird normals going on right here. That's kind of freaking it out. So you're going to want to make sure all of your normals are correct and do a better job of modeling than I've done. But I didn't actually apply a modifier on this part. I'll show you what I did with the bottle because this actually had a thickness on it. You go to solidify, and then I actually can't remember what I made this. 1, it was like 2 or 3. And then I made the offset 0. And there you go. So now it's representing like a thick shell. So this is after and this is before, right? So you get it. So that's really cool. And there's a bunch of other modifiers that are helpful and that will help you kind of visualize your projects. And then you want to hit apply once you're done. So, and then the next one is particle properties. This may be useful for if you're doing like SPH stuff or other type of fluid dynamics. And then the only other thing I really worked with was the materials. So this is the material tab. This is really important. What you want to do is apply certain materials to different properties. And I'm going to start with an easy one at the beginning. So let's just open up the bottle cap. So this. If you want to make this material something, you first have to look at what it looks like right now, right? So go up here into your render preview, and right now it's just going to be like this ghostly bright white thing. So whenever you click on it, it's going to open up your like material stuff here. I'm going to suggest doing all of your material stuff in the shading tabs over here, just because you get a little more access to this like it's very confusing. This is like the controls for it, What you're going to do is you're going to click on it, and it's going to open up like the material properties, and you can like scroll in on this, and it's the same controls in this window as it is in the Blender window. And then you're also going to open up the materials property over here. So if you just want to change the base color of this, just click base color, and we'll change it to red and make it a little darker. And there you go. And then there's some other things that really change the way the material acts. One of them is metallic. So this is just making the material look more metallic. If it's 0, it looks like this. If it's metallic, it's going to look really, really shiny like that. So you can give it, you know, if you had like a metal, or if you had like a metal, I did 5. If you had like a metal material and you want to really kind of make it look like metal, you'd use a lot of metallic stuff. And then there's things like spectacular. You can just mess around with these. It's really just gonna be playing with this. There's a lot more detail that you can go into. Clear coat's pretty cool. It's actually like adding a clear coat to the top of it. See how shiny it is. That's neat. And that's really it for just basic materials. That's all I did, was just mess with metallic and then just the color. When it came to the glass, it was a lot more complicated. So if I visualize the glass, it's this one. So the glass was much more complicated. I couldn't just color it in a certain way. I had to actually like add types of materials. And let me just do this. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna delete this. You're then gonna Shift A and go to Mix Shader. So you're gonna go to Mix Shader, and you're just gonna click that here, and then you're gonna click and drag and connect these things with this, you know, connector. This may not be helpful for anybody, but if you're looking for glass, here you go. And then you're gonna go to RGB curves. Here, you're gonna go to RGB curves here, and you're gonna click that, and then you're gonna move that kind of up here, and then click and drag from fact up here. There you go. And then you're gonna need a glossy BSDF, which is a shader, I believe. Glossy BSDF. You can click that here, and then you're going to click this bottom thing and drag it here. And then you're going to need a glass BSDF. And you're going to click this middle one and drag it here. And then you're going to need this one called Fresnel. So you're going to need this thing called a Fresnel. It's over here in input. And then you're going to click that here and then just drag the color up to here. So going one by one, I can't really explain all these things, but you're going to take glossy BSDF, you're going to make this 0. You're going to take your IOR, make it 0.95. You're then going to take your Fresnel 1.3, and then you're going to go into your RGB curves here, and you're going to add a curve or a point of the curve. And you're just going to left click and drag, and you're going to make this 0.33, and then this is going to be 0.67. And then that's it. That's how you make your glass. You may be wondering, what this doesn't look right. Well, if you go into your render properties, that still doesn't look right. So I didn't do something right yet. One sec. Okay, so I figured out what was the issue. So you're going to go over here into your material tab and then go down to settings. And you're going to go to blend mode and make this alpha hashed. And then you're going to go to screen space refraction here and check this on. And now it looks like glass. So that's how you make glass, but you may be wondering, this doesn't look right because it's like dark down here. You don't have like a lot of colorful reflections. And you would be correct. So one of the big things that helps Blender make something look realistic is the environment. So what you want to do is add an image to the environment, and that's back up here in the environment tab, world properties. So what you're going to want to do to add this image to the background is go back up here to the world properties. You're then going to click use nodes, and then it's going to allow you to add a background on here. Now you're going to need a certain type of file, and there's this video here, and I'll link this, that kind of shows you how to do this, and also shows you where to download some of these free environments. And the one that I used was this one called Helipad Afternoon. You just download it, and it's going to give you a series of files. It's going to look like this, where you're going to have a bunch of these. And you can use these things called HDR files, which are basically like, just think of a circular image or a cylindrical image that just kind of goes around in a three-dimensional way, and that allows like it to reflect the different, colors and stuff in it. And you're going to go over and go to use nodes, and then click this circle to the right of color, and then go to environment texture. You're then going to go to open, and then find your location, and then you're just going to click on one of these HDR files, and then it's going to open it. So like I said, this just kind of creates this, it is a sphere, it's not a cylinder, but yeah, it's like a environment around your object. So it's pretty neat. And what that does is it really adds see these like reflections now. If I hide this, well, you can't really tell because now it's pink because I got this, but if I remove this, see how it's very bland, but then whenever I go back and I add this back in, it really makes it really vibrant, and it looks real. That's what you got to do, and then you can add your other stuff back in, and that's how I made it look really real. If you want me to, I can go ahead and add some properties to these. So if I click this, go down to color, I'll just make this black, and then you can change the metallic of it, make it a little more glossy. Oh wait, that's not glossy. Spectacular makes it a little more glossy. And you can add a little clear coat to it as well. It's great. And then we can click these two, and you can make them like a silver kind of color, like this, and then add like a lot of metal to it. And it's going to look really metallic, and you may want to even make this lighter. And then you can add the same thing here, and you can rename these. So if you call this like metal, you can then click up here and then go to this down drop, and you can just type metal and then click it, and it'll apply the same thing here. And I'll click it here too. There you go. So you can click circle, or not circle, 0 on your numpad, and then say we want to render this out. Well, what you can do then is go up to render, and you always want to make like a test. You can do render image, and it's going to do this kind of rendered image window. So this looks kind of aluminum. You can make it more glossy, less glossy. You can just mess around with all the material properties if you want. You can also turn off one of the lights. But if you get in here and you like this and you want to save the image, you can hit image, save as, and then just type in whatever you want it. It's going to be untitled. There you go. And it's going to save it, and that's like an image that you're testing. And like I said, if you wanted to turn one of these lights off in one of these, all you go up here is you go to your area lights, and you can click them on and off, and you'll actually see them turn on and off. And I actually did this for mine. I turned off these lateral ones, and then I went to render, and then you can see it's better. But I don't know how to do this. Maybe it's this. I don't know, but even if it's off, like if it's hidden, it still shows up in a render. So I may be able to find something on how to fix this, but just toggling them doesn't turn them off in the render. There's probably a way you can actually do it. but I ended up just like deleting these so that it renders out. But if you have everything that you like and you want to make a video, you go up here to the output file, make sure this is AVI JPEG, and then you're going to go to render and click render animation, and it's going to start rendering your animation in a different window. And here it is. And it's going to take a while. So I'm going to stop it, and my Blender may crash. There it goes. It takes a while, but once it's done, you're going to have your video, and then that's how I did it. And this was probably like a 30-minute video, but I'll put timestamps if people don't really care about this part. But that's how you do it. Looks good. Just use these pre-made like template environments that really help and make everything look better. I really hope this was helpful. I think it's really cool. I haven't seen anything like this on detailed instructions on how to get an LS-Dyna or any other FEA solver simulation output rendered in Blender. I know there's some programs that you have to pay for that can do something similar to this, like Meta, but this is like professional level rendering. If you actually like go through the time and make materials and get all your settings up, you can get like really, really nice looking stuff. Because what I put up there is very basic and it's not even super great. But you can take a lot of time and make your stuff look really cool if you want to showcase things. So I hope this was helpful. I think it's pretty cool. Let me know in the comments if you think it's cool or if you want to correct me on a million things that I probably did wrong. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.